So when it comes to scientific presentations, I know there's no real training provided to teach you how to present. Indeed, this may be the first real lecture-like content that you've been delivered on this very topic. So the results of this lack of training may mean that you're not necessarily an expert on public speaking or presentations, but what you are an expert on is listening to talks. I mean, you're all university students, so you've likely listened to hours and hours of lectures, including some of my own. But in addition to this, you've likely listened to the presentations or talks from other students as well. So as an expert listener, you have an appreciation for what you want to listen to. You should use this to inform your own presentation. Think about what it is that you like to listen to. But let's shift the focus back to your presentations and let's consider a few of the basics to ensure both your spoken and your visual components are up to scratch. Let's start with some PowerPoint basics. Now, some of you already know my disdain for Comic Sans. That said, a sans serif font like Comic Sans is indeed what you want to use rather than serif fonts. Serif fonts are those ones that have the little lines attached to the ends to make them look all fancy. The trouble is, psychoanalysts have determined that serif fonts are more difficult to read and take longer to read than sans serif, which is obviously what you want to go for here. Oh, and you need to avoid all caps. That's also difficult to read, and it also suggests that you're yelling at the audience as well. You should also watch your font size, so consider where you're presenting or what you're presenting on to make sure that your font size is suitable for your audience. Now, what about color? Well, again, many of you know my disdain for space-based backgrounds. I know we're in astronomy, but I mean, look how hard this is to read, right? It's crap. Keep it simple and avoid a bad combination of colors, and perhaps consider colorblind friendly options as well. Now, what about layout? Well, every slide should have a short and simple heading, something that provides an overview of what the slide is about. You should also limit the amount of text you display on a slide as well, probably no more than a few lines per text block, or consider bullet points to break up the text as well. Why is this so? Well, if you put too much text on your slide, your audience will just simply tune out or they'll get lost. Onto images. You should try to include an image, a graph, or a plot, or something similar on each slide to maintain attention. It should also be something that's relevant as well, something relevant to the text on your slide or something that you are presenting. Now, this isn't mandatory, but it certainly helps. Your images should be adequately labeled, and again, consider the color options with the images as well, especially if you're creating your own plots or graphs. Now, what about fancy transitions? Well, you really should skip them. They waste time and they really add nothing to your presentation. A simple wipe or a simple dissolve is fine, but something like this or this, it's just too much. Now, you should avoid drowning your audience with data and equations. Too many times I see students present me with slides and slides of equations. But unless you're prepared to explain it all to me and how it's relevant to your presentation, it's really useless. Same as when I present to you equations in my lecture. I only include equations if they're relevant and I explain them in detail to make sure you know what is going on. You should do the same. Now, finally, you should think about your presentation structure. You should build to your conclusion progressively. Make it like a story with a decent beginning and an ending. And if you're not going to talk about something, leave it out. Okay, so that's the PowerPoint side of things. But what about the spoken side of things? Well, look, there's tons and tons of resources available at the links that I've shared, which include tips on speaking effectively. These include speaking loudly without shouting, speaking clearly, speaking slightly slower than usual, maintaining good body posture, minding mannerisms, keeping eye contact, and paying attention to the time you have left. At these links, you'll also find tips on overcoming nerves, which mostly goes into details about how to prepare and how to have a good night's sleep before your presentation. Look, I also provide a tip sheet on Blackboard, which you may find will come in handy, so make sure you check that out. But the key takeaway for delivering a good presentation will be practice, 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 and not just in your head, but out loud and ideally in front of others and multiple times. Practice now, not only for this unit, but for the many times you'll need to present at university in the future and perhaps in your career in the future as well. If you tackle your shortcomings today, you'll be an expert tomorrow.